I think a lot of it comes down to one of the most important words that we have in our entire civilization, which is communication, over communication. You look at every piece of misalignment that we have in the world, and it all comes down, I believe, to miscommunication, to some kind of lack of ability to communicate effectively. So when we talk about like things like EOS, we think about it in terms of there's really ever only been like 23 issues in the history of business. And I even narrow it down further, and I think that there's really only been one. And it falls down to how we communicate. Can we effectively communicate together?
You're asking yourself, why am I doing this?
Smart people would know how to use all these different tools. They start with something small.
You'll never get your entire organization if you don't pull off operations.
Don't give up.
It can be as small as that.
I think you guys are going to have our last today. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Delegate That podcast, where we discuss the art and the science of delegation, management, business, and leadership, and also how to get your time back. And today, our guest is Adam Hill. He is a fourth generation family business with 150 employees. He knows a lot about triathlon, business, EOS. This man is a beast. So I'm super pumped to have him in the show. And you guys are going to get a ton of value. So welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks, Marcio. I appreciate it, man. This is really awesome. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the intro.
You bet. You bet. So for those that don't know you, if you can share a little bit about your background.
So I grew up in Southern California, and basically I was born into a family business. My great grandfather started in 1923, and I came into the world when that business was about 50 something years old, and started working for the company in 2002, right out of college, and just really developed a real passion for the legacy that we were building, all that kind of stuff. But I ended up working in the company for about 2 decades up until now, obviously. But when I first started coming into the company, I really wasn't in a good place, because in college I really started to get into alcohol, and the reason I did was because I started to experience these really severe panic attacks. And I don't know if you've ever had a panic attack, or the listeners have ever had a panic attack. They're insane, debilitating. And back in the late 90s, we didn't really talk much about that. We didn't know a lot about, panic attacks or anything like that. So I just never really wanted to share my experience about that. So I turned to alcohol, and I used alcohol to really, got really terrible into alcoholism for a little over a decade, well into my early 30s, and got sober in my early 30s. And that's when I started to see a real transformation in my life. And so you mentioned the triathlon thing. About a year after I got sober in 2012, I started to really think about wanting to compete in triathlon. And I was looking at this race called the Ironman World Championship. And if you've ever turned on the television on a Saturday afternoon on NBC, you would see a bunch of guys in Speedos and women in bathing suits tearing into the oceans of Hawaii and starting a 140.6 mile triathlon. And I saw that for the first time, and really, really wanted to do that. But I was never an athlete. I just quit smoking a month earlier, and I really just didn't know what I was doing on that front. So I decided to sign up for an Ironman. And a year later, that was going to happen a year later, and I built the parachute on the way down, started training, and eventually 4 years later, I actually achieved that dream. And that was one of those things that really, it kind of it planted that seed that I was capable of much more than I thought I was. And I tell you that story a little bit, in an abbreviated fashion, just to kind of plant the seed of what I wanted to be as a leader, and where I wanted to take the businesses that I was building. First with the family business that was already 100 years old by the time I took it over. And then ultimately with my personal brand on building an EOS business, on helping other companies to implement EOS, because EOS was wildly successful for us. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where it went. I took over our family business in 2018, had a few years where I really struggled to find my identity as a leader, and really struggled to get alignment around a vision and everything like that. But upon, learning about EOS and hiring an implementer and bringing that in, finally was able to, pun intended, get traction on our business and move to the next level, to the point where we feel like we're running running really well now. We're able to tackle our key issues, really able to go deep and find a powerful vision that everybody's aligned on, and bring us into the next century. So that's kind of a nutshell story about where I am and where I've been.
Amazing. No, and what that company, the success that has, the longevity without EOS, imagine with the EOS, I can only imagine a couple centuries for sure. And now just quick on the triathlon, I think I mentioned to you that I've done one in Switzerland. Took me 15 hours.
Wow.
You probably finishing what, 7 hours or something, if I remember?
Not quite. No, not quite that fast, but just finishing. I mean, yeah. So I finished my fastest race was in I think it was either Arizona or Santa Rosa. I don't remember which. I qualified in Santa Rosa, and both those races I was around a 9 hour and 27 minute.
Amazing.
And
Amazing. Wow.
But Switzerland, I know, is a hard race. I know it's super hilly. You got European competitors who are crazy fast. So I always like to say, I mean, like you you start and you do an Ironman, you do that kind of race, no matter where you finish, you are a beast, you are a monster, and it's amazing that you could do something like that. So
Yeah, no, the mindset side. Now on the US, you mentioned it's been what, a couple of years now? How many years?
yeah, we've been operating on EOS for about 3 years now.
Now, question on when you have 150 employees in the team, how do you keep everybody rowing the same direction? Now, the short answer is EOS. I can anticipate that. But what else?
Yeah, it's, I think a lot of it comes down to one of the most important words that we have in our entire civilization, which is communication, over communication. You look at every piece of misalignment that we have in the world, and it all comes down, I believe, to miscommunication, to some kind of lack of ability to communicate effectively. So when we talk about like things like EOS, we think about it in terms of there's really ever only been like 23 issues in the history of business. And I even narrow it down further, and I think that there's really only been one. And it falls down to how we communicate. Can we effectively communicate together? And I think that that's been really what's helped us to drive. Now, with 150 employees, of course, it gets hard to keep everybody rowing in the same direction. It's always a balance of, do we have the right people? Are they aligned with our core values? Do we have the foundational pieces in place so that they know the systems and processes that we need to do and operate on a daily basis? And the way that we get to those answers is through communication. So putting in the kinds of systems like EOS or like data tracking systems like we use NetSuite. Those really help us to get to a point where we can see where we're having maybe misalignment and kind of bring those things back online. And that's really the short answer. Is I think really communication is the key part of getting everybody rowing in the same direction.
If I tell you that a couple hours ago I was driving, I was like, man, communication is the hardest problem in business. You think I'm gonna making this up? Amazing, yes, because we had an issue on communication in our company, so that's exactly what you were talking about. Now, when you think about delegation, the topic of delegation, which is the biggest topic that we cover on the podcast. What have been some of your lessons over the last couple of years? Some interesting things, some mistakes, over delegation, under delegation. Any stories or experiences that you can share?
Yeah, so I notoriously under delegate, and that started. When I took over Hill Brothers, I mentioned that I struggled to find my identity. I really struggled to find where I was in the company, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that I stepped into that role as CEO, and I immediately began wearing too many hats. I was wearing the president, the CEO hat, so I was both the visionary and the integrator. For a very large, well-established organization. I also ultimately, within the next year, my marketing and sales vice president left, and I took over that role. So now I was holding on to the marketing and sales role, something that I'd never really done before. And then when I found the sales and marketing leader that I could put into that place, I lost the operations person. Then I had to take over that role. So I notoriously kind of just learned that when I'm wearing that many hats, I cannot effectively focus my energy in the right place. So the most, I think the most important thing that I did in that role, once I actually knew what a visionary was that I discovered that that's the role that I best fit, was the visionary role. And it was okay. I mean, I still served in the capacity of visionary and integrator, but just that knowledge, that self awareness that I was aligned with that visionary role, helped me to delegate more effectively to things that were outside of my comfort level, outside of my routine, outside of the things that I wanted, that I love to do, the things that I was really great at doing. And so when I let go of those, that helped me out. So I think I ultimately, when I'm thinking of delegation, I recognize that I'm that type of person that thinks, well, let me just do it instead of trying to find the right person who does do it right, does it better than me. And I know that that's a mistake. So I always just try to step back and I just ask myself, who would be the best person? What would be the best fit? What would be ultimately, first off, be the right seat for this type of role? Do we have a seat in place, and do we have a person that can fill this seat? Um, that's where like the Delegate Elevate tool has really helped me in the past few years.
I love that tool. For the folks that don't know about it, if you want to share a little bit about it.
Yeah. So Delegate and Elevate it's an EOS tool that really helps you to define what you love doing and what you're really great at doing, and helps you to try to stay in that sweet spot. So basically, if you can take a sheet of paper, put it into 4 quadrants, put what you love to do and what you're great at in the top two, and that what you don't like to do and that what you're not great at in the bottom quadrants, and then just make a list. Start brain dumping the list of things that you do every week on that list. You'll start to discover, where your sweet spot lies in those top 2 quadrants. And then you could try to stay in those areas as much as possible and delegate out the rest. That's how you do it, because there's always going to be somebody who loves or is great at the things that you're not loving or you're not great at.
What would be curious? What would be on your best quadrant over there, and the ones that you don't like and you are not good? If you can share.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm great at and I love to do is creative problem solving. I just like to get creative and think like really just high level strategy on like what does this kind of thing look like? Especially, and I also I think in that quadrant is just vision building. I love to build out visions. I love to create those long term 10 and 5 3-year targets. Those things I love doing. I think what I'm not really great at, what I don't like to do is that day to day, management of people necessarily. I'm not that great at it. Even necessarily, if I'm being honest, holding other people accountable. I'm generally more of the motivating. Hey, let's go. Let's get in this together. Let's just keep going. And I don't like to get like pulled back into the drama, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. I just don't like getting drawn back into the drama of stuff. So that day to day, I realize just kind of where my head should be at and where I shouldn't be putting my effort necessarily.
Amazing. Let's see, from a EOS standpoint, when you guys are implementing, what are some pitfalls that you guys fell into, or maybe now as an implementer, that you start seeing your customers, clients, some pitfalls there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think when I started to see the early success of EOS, and even now, like as I become an implementer, my life starts to revolve around EOS to the point where we were even talking about offline, where I have these EOS meetings with my wife, so everything revolves around it. So from my standpoint, if there's I mean, if there's nails that are around me, I could see EOS as the hammer. It's gonna solve everything, and I think that's a mistake, because EOS is designed to do some great things to help you build your business around 6 key components, and really strengthen those 6 key components, and that's all it's designed to do. It's a system of execution, but it's not going to make a terrible business better. In other words, it's not going to make it so that if you're in the wrong markets or you have the right or the wrong products, it's not going to make you all of a sudden have the right products and right markets. If you don't have the right business model or the marketing or the markets and things like that, then it's not going to help you. And so that's, I think, what we can get stuck in is this idea that EOS will help us to become a great business, even if there's not the great bones of a business there. For Hill Brothers, we were very fortunate. We had 100 years of history. We knew we had something there. It worked. We were just floundering, and we were really struggling. So that's why EOS worked for us, was because we knew we had the products, we knew we had the markets. We just needed to pull out of ourselves what would be good. And those first three, the vision component, the people component, and the data component. When we started to get clear on those, you get transparency in your organization. When you're transparency, you get to see the things, the opportunities, the ideas, not just the bad stuff, but also the good stuff, the opportunities that you can have. And that's where you start to really, really build on that. And so I think that just that's kind of the answer to the question, is those are the pitfall I think that you want to avoid, is thinking that EOS is going to solve everything. And it may not. It's a great system of execution, but it's not going to create a great business for you.
Have you guys seen some growth that you would be able to attribute to EOS, or it's hard to tease that apart?
Well, I would say that, yeah, I would say definitely we've seen some growth that's attributed to it. Some of that growth has been, well, I'll tell you that the growth that we have seen since we implemented EOS, our revenue has grown by about $40 million, which is about 50% over the course of 2 years, putting us into a 9-figure revenue company. And we started out, actually, when we started implementing EOS, we were essentially scraping bottom on profitability. We weren't really bringing in any cash flow. So that's where we were really floundering. We were starting to lose cash flow, and we were thinking like, oh, this is, we had to get a hold on that. So 3 years later, we're pulling in profitability, we're pulling in cash flow. We've got a strong cash position. So we've really helped to nail that down. And I think the things that we can directly attribute to that, having a great scorecard, knowing that we're measuring the right things like cash flow, and getting the right people in the right seats. We've gotten some great executive level. We have a great executive level team now, and we're all aligned. Getting that communication better, that meeting pulse, those kinds of things have really helped us to zero in on what has helped us the most to grow in the direction that we're growing. So yeah.
Now, what are the dynamics on a family business?
Yeah, there's a lot. It's a big question. I mean, yeah, so our company, 4 generations down, we have 60 people who are essentially tied to, in some way, the business, that are owners or that are in the business within that, down to 4th generation. There are So if you think about your family that maybe 4 generations back, you're talking about second cousins now. And I don't know how many second cousins I still don't know a lot of mine, and so I think that's the important thing when we're thinking about building a legacy, or a legacy business like ours. It's going to last for 100 years. It's going to be a sustainable family business for many, many generations. We have to also think about how we're being intentional about structuring that for the long term. What does that look like when it reaches generation 4? What is the involvement of family? What can they expect from the business? Because I can tell you, most businesses, especially legacy businesses, over the long term, grow on a linear scale. They grow at approximately inflation, maybe a little bit better. Families grow exponentially. So if there's that distinction, well, then the family, generally speaking, is going to lose wealth over the long term, because they're not planning for that exponential growth versus the linear growth. So you have to really start thinking through, well, what does this look like if we're going to create this? How are we going to involve family? A lot of families don't do that. Frankly, my family didn't do that. So I have the unique perspective of being in the 4th generation, being able to look backward at our founder 100 years ago and say, all right, well, what would he have wanted from that point? Or what was the real vision there? And ultimately, putting that aside, what do we want to look like creating this vision 100 years from now, when we're 7 or 8 generations down the line? What would we want to look like, and what do we want to be? So I think looking at the family dynamics, that's important. getting back to what we were talking about communication, that's where that's vital. And I think that's where the structure is so important. We need to make sure in these family businesses, as we're involving more people, that we're intentional about setting up a family charter, something that defines the rules of engagement, so to speak, for family members. Setting up like family assemblies where we're able to get together outside of the business world and just connect as a family, so that we can come together. Or building the right types of boards, like advisory boards or family boards or boards of directors, so that we know what that governance structure looks like. Uh, a lot of families just tend to get in that space where, I just don't want to deal with cousin so and so I'm just not going to communicate with them. But that doesn't make the problem go away, and that's where family dynamics can influence whether a family business wins or fails. I heard it. I think I was interviewing Sarah Stern on my podcast recently. She's a family business expert, and I think she said that family businesses don't fail because of anything that's wrong with the business. It fails because of the family, and that's so true. You need to organize the family in the same way that you organize the business.
Almost need like a quarterly or yearly meeting, that kind of stuff, probably, right? I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like putting EOS on the top of the business. I mean, it's like you have it running in the business, but make sure you have that meeting pulse for the family members as well, especially those that are involved, especially those that own the business. We need to make sure that everybody's engaged if they're a stakeholder in any way.
Well, you have studied the topic of fear a lot, and is often a silent driver for many entrepreneurs, including me. So, how have you transformed fear into a tool for achieving breakthroughs in business and the personal life?
Yeah, and it does stem back to my time where I was in college when I started experiencing those first panic attacks. I'd always lived with really high anxiety. And my goal at that time when I experienced that was not to learn about it. It was more to just suppress it, to push it down, to make it go away. I didn't want to experience it. It was too uncomfortable to experience it. So I drank heavily. And I did that for, like I said, more than a decade, until I got into a point where I started to do things that I never thought that I would do. And because I was an alcoholic, I started living a life more of shame than of fear. And that shame, it was driven to this point where I got behind the wheel of a car, and I drove well under the influence, over the legal limit, of course. And I got a DUI, and I got into an accident, and ended up sitting in jail. And that was the last drink that I had. And I realized, of course, that I couldn't live that way anymore. And when I started going to meetings in Alcoholics Anonymous and started to go through the world of sobriety, that's where I kind of learned to reshape the relationship with fear. I started to learn a lot through my brothers in sobriety, so to speak, that a lot of the feelings that we're trying to suppress when we're drinking or when we're drugging or doing anything, that we're trying to run away from some problems that we have, is we're really strengthening that thing that we're trying to fight against. By running away from fear, we're making it stronger. We're making it seem more scary. We're making it seem that way. And it kind of led to the realization that, no, if we just turn around, and what does it mean to really face the fear? It just really means that we need to get comfortable in the space of experiencing the fear, realizing that when we're living in fear, or if we experience a fear, and we're in that experience, it doesn't mean we have to fight it, or flee from it, or run from it, or even freeze. But we can just sit there and do this other thing that is so important. We get curious about it. We just ask questions. What is this telling me? What am I afraid of here? Is this signaling that I'm in danger, or is it signaling that there might be an opportunity? I really firmly believe that fear is there to signal us of those two things. Either we're in danger, which we'll know we're in danger. If there's a guy coming at us with a knife, we're in danger. We should be afraid, and that should scare us. But it's also signaling that there's an opportunity. When are the other times that we're afraid? When we have a new business idea that is like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do that. when we're going after the new date with the really attractive person that we never thought that we'd ask out. Oh my gosh, that fear. Or if we're, or if we're going on to a podcast with a good friend that where it's going to go out and it's, oh my gosh, I'm afraid. But those kinds of things are opportunities. So now that we know that it's signaling an opportunity, can we also look at it for what it really is? Is it just fear that is coming up, or is it also excitement? And if that fear and the excitement are showing up in equal measure in our minds, and we're like excited about it, but we're also afraid of it, that is an opportunity, and it's opportunity for growth because it's right outside of our comfort zone. And so that's the kind of mindset that I got into when I started to pursue Ironman triathlon. I don't know if that was the same experience for you when you did yours, but I just never thought that I could do it. I never wanted to swim in the open water in the ocean. It scared the heck out of me. Biking, I'd never ridden a road bike. I'd run maybe like some 10Ks, maybe a half marathon, but I'd never done a full marathon, especially after biking. But that was what I wanted to do. And just the act of taking the steps to walk through it, to go through it, led me to move beyond that fear. Did it make it so that I wasn't afraid? No, I was still afraid. That fear was still an important signal to me, but it changed my relationship with it so that I could do these amazing things, that I could pursue more adventure or pursue more excitement in life, while also being afraid, but also experiencing tremendous growth and ultimately changing that relationship with fear. And I no longer have to suppress it with alcohol or other substances to try to fend it off. That fear has become more of a friend. And so that's how I've used it. I've used it to drive my business decisions, to drive my athletic pursuits, things like that. That's so fear. Yeah, it can be a tool for growth. We just have to get curious about it. We have to listen to it. We have to, take the next steps carefully.
I love the example with the excitement and fear. If they're equal levels, that means opportunity. Never thought about that way, but that's clear as light. Yeah, clear as day. Love that. Now you mentioned Ironman again, and you're really good at healthy life habits, and so any tips that you can give us? What have you learned on that arena?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is that we just need to focus on keeping it simple. I think in the world of fitness, there is about a billion different ways to get healthy and fit, and they are being exploited on social media or in the media or the news. And what we tend to find is that we are drawn to the the super sexy or the complicated ways of getting healthy and fit. We're really drawn to that. Why? Because we think it has to be hard. And so when we see somebody getting really healthy, we think, okay, what are the super complicated things that person is doing? But 95% of where we get to, and this is kind of similar to the EOS process component because everything can be drawn back to EOS, but 95% of the process of getting healthy and fit can be applied to the simple, basic fundamentals. Eat healthy, eat clean, healthy foods, uh, uh, and move your body in an effective way. Lift heavy things, and drink plenty of water. And then it's the additional 5 or 10% that people like to focus on. Well, what is the specific movements or like the specific techniques? It's also those 5 or 10% that tend to get you injured or tend to make you unhealthy or tend to be different for some people. Some people, keto diets work very well. Other people, not so much. But what works for everybody? Just eating like really learning, getting a healthy diet and adding really healthy food to your diet. The other tip that I would have for people is we focus so much on restriction in diet culture. And this is something that's really near and dear to me because I know I'm familiar with people that have had eating disorders, and it's really much more common than we think. I think it is as much of an epidemic as the obesity epidemic, if not worse. And that's driven by this culture of needing to restrict and restrict and restrict. I actually am in a culture. I actually think my mindset around fitness is more of abundance, in the same way that it is with, like, say, the world of business. We can all have a life of abundance. you can eat, or you can consume lots of healthy food, an abundance of healthy food, and be very healthy. That doesn't make you unhealthy to consume an abundance of healthy food. And if you're eating clean, you're better able to regulate your body, and you're able to exercise, and you're able to enjoy that. I think that those are just a couple of things that I would really like to say that are counterintuitive, to what people tend to think. They think, well, I need to restrict things and I need to work out a lot. Those two things don't go hand in hand. You can't work out a lot and not fuel your body. You need to fuel your body with plenty of food, and it's really important.
Well, this is the first New Year's that I didn't have any alcohol. So I'm like, oh, that was good. Yeah,
Congratulations, that's great.
thanks. Yeah, feeling really good already. No headaches or anything like that. So amazing. Well, anything from a business standpoint, healthiness, sports, anything else that you want to add before we wrap up for today, Adam?
Yeah, I think generally, like, if you were, I know that legacy is a big topic now, and people want to build a legacy for their future, and that's really great. I love that there's a lot of talk, especially amongst entrepreneurs, about the legacy they want to build. Maybe they want to build a business that their kids can take over, or maybe they want to build family that their kids want to talk to focus on. And I just want to, I want to, just I want to give everybody just the idea that the legacy, when you're thinking about legacy, just remember that the legacy is not about you. It is about them many generations down the line. You could put yourself in the shoes of your great grandkids and think of where you would like them to be, to thrive, to be making their own decisions, to have the autonomy to do their own thing, not trap them in something. Think about legacy that way, something that allows them that freedom that you would want now. And then allow them and teach them to think of legacy the same way. That's going to help you to be unstoppable when it comes to building sustainable businesses, families, and things like that. It's just think about legacy in terms of what it is for future generations.
Wow, you're inspiring, man. I appreciate you taking the time today, Adam. I've learned a lot, and it's good to have you as a brother in the GoBonus community, and I appreciate you taking the time today, my friend.
This is an honor, man. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.